nice to see you here this evening.
Well, it's nice to see you.
But is it true that you're moving away from New Albany?
Yes, it is true. James Jr., my James Jr. is packing at our house at 9th and Market, so he won't be here till later on. We're going to visit his daddy, James, and my other children, of course, again, but we ran into a bit of a financial difficulty, and I'm very blessed because my family's Quaker, and they left me a house in Philadelphia. They willed me a house, so I'm very blessed, and that's where we are moving, James Jr. and I. I lost Frances. I lost her 1 year ago, and my husband James, I lost him 3 years ago, and our 6 other children are also buried here. These are James's favorite flowers from our yard. Excuse me. James made a difference in the world. He always said, "Don't worry, Phoebe, God will take care of us." And God did take care of us. We met in New Albany in 1831, and James was from Orrington, Maine, his family, but they relocated to Cincinnati, Ohio, and my family were Quakers from Philadelphia. Well, we came to look for a farm, and his father came to Cincinnati to make steamboats and to buy real estate. But James, my husband, decided that he was going to come to New Albany because there were so many opportunities here, being another river city. So we were married in 1831, and James and I, pardon me, we've been married for 36 years. Now, James was a very industrious man. After we married, we tried to have children, but there were a lot of business ventures, and children was definitely one business that we wanted, but unfortunately things just didn't seem to quite want to work out that way. James said, "We're not in control of things, Abby, God is." So he got together with some businessmen, and he said, "We need to move our hogs and hardware. We need to compete with Louisville and Madison. We need to send our products up north." And so the businessmen got together of Salem and New Albany, and some men from the Lyceum Club, that's Lyceum. And in 1847, the new Albany-Salem Railroad was founded, and my husband James became the president of the railroad. Now, 3 years later, those tracks were finished and laid all the way to Salem. And there was a big celebration on the 4th of July, and everybody was there, and there was barbecue and flowing, and so were the political speeches. And one little girl came out to me and she said, "I may not ever remember those speeches, but I sure will remember that barbecue, Mrs. Brooks." So she was just a cutie pie. It was a grand celebration. It was the thing to do. People came from Louisville to go to Salem on the train, up and back. And the next day, another group of ladies and gentlemen, up and back. And we did move our hogs and hardware, and we did help the city of New Albany that way. Now, most people don't realize, though, that my husband, being the president, he was also an avid abolitionist. You see, James, my husband, was an ordained elder at the Second Presbyterian Church, and he was an ordained elder for 21 years. That's the church we went to. So along with the Reverend Sneed, the Reverend Atterbury, and 2 other elders, Lothmiller and Chamberlain, they were anti-slavery, because James always said to me, "Phoebe, I know that the only man that is a slave, it should be a man who's a slave to sin." And I believe, Phoebe, that the slaveholders are sitting. So all of the Presbyterian people in the Second Presbyterian Church felt this way. Well, James, being that he could issue the tickets, he could issue the free tickets, being the president, he helped many a slave to their freedom. Not many people know about that. But going back to our railroad and the engines, they were built right here in New Albany, and they employed a lot of people from New Albany, and they were beautiful, red and brass and shiny, and why, I'll tell you, they were so beautiful that James always said Joseph's brothers are jealous of these just like they were jealous of his coat, and so were the people of Louisville and Madison. Well, by 1847, 7 years after that, that train, don't you know, went all the way to Michigan City, way up there on Lake Michigan. And they weren't always on time. It was $7 round trip, but oftentimes they'd stop for lovers who were having their departing kiss at the Salem Depot. I'm sure you might have seen the depot as you came in, right there on Pearl and Oak. But unfortunately, by 1848, there was a fire, 1858, I'm sorry, there was a fire at the depot, and that really hurt the New Albany-Salem Railroad, and financially it was getting out of control, and so James resigned. But years later after that, a couple years later when the Civil War started, Edward Stanton, the Secretary of War, commissioned my husband to work for him, and not many people know this, but what James did was refurbish steamboats into gunboats to help the cause. I'm very, very proud of my husband. James was a man that made a difference. So do it for James. You go out and you make a difference in your lives. God bless you all.